recording this. So, hello to the EU citizenship course. Basically, this is the first time we are doing such a course here in Denmark. And the reason why we decided to do it is because we feel like even though we have a lot of people here who understand that they are EU citizens, they don't really understand what's behind that. To what extent do their rights apply, and what sort of opportunities they could use to better themselves. I have a feeling that many people don't take advantage of that, and that's too bad. And also, there's also a problem that when you as a EU citizen go around Europe and you're trying to, be part of the different societies, because in the end we have those 27 homes, right? 27 member states, 27 homes. Unfortunately, on a local level or a national level, it's not always that the state or the administration is perfectly aware of your rights. So in the end, you kind of have to be yourself responsible for your own rights and for your own opportunities to know about it, so that you can also inform sometimes even the public authorities, because they might either forgot about it or they never really bothered to inform their own employees about it. So only if we as EU citizens, when we travel around Europe, promote these EU rights and make all the institutions more aware of them, that's when we can see progress and they will become more and more a common knowledge. Because unfortunately, you cannot say today that EU rights are common knowledge. We are far, far away from something like that. But this course is being brought to you by AMIS. It's a more inclusive society. It's a humanitarian organization made 30 years ago with the purpose of promoting EU values in Eastern Europe. Since then, the organization has changed a bit focus and is also looking into representing internationals in Denmark and trying to give them some sort of a support base. This is kind of new for AMIS. It's a new direction that's is being tested right now. So I cannot say too much about it. It's in process of being developed. This course is being supported by Europa-Nævnet, which is like let's say a committee under the Danish Parliament, which finances any sort of initiatives related to promoting debate on European Union, from questioning it to understanding it better and so on. And it's also important to say that this all the content that you see here is AMIS responsibility. We have developed this course, so it's not Europa-Nævnet's responsibility, as you also can see written on the screen. My name is Narcis George Matake. I'm from 1st of January, I will be the president of AMIS, but I'm also like the executive editor of Last Week in Denmark, so probably you know me from there. But otherwise, I have like a very, let's just say, strong attachments to anything EU. I'm the person that on 9th of May, on Europe Day, by the way, goes in the morning and raises the EU flag up and feels something when that happens. And I've been part of the EU institutions. I have worked in the European Parliament for like a year. I have been active on all sort of EU level. I represented Denmark, for example, at the Council of Regions. Some years ago, I have been part of many let's just say formats for young leaders between 2014 to 2019. So I kind of have a very close relationship to everything that Europe has to offer, and I kind of always took advantage of the opportunities offered by my European citizenship, or European Union citizenship, to be fair to the other European countries which are not part of EU yet. So that's me. Together with me today, you'll have Adrian. Maybe Adrian, you can make a quick introduction as well.
Just a second. Yeah, hello. My name is Adrian Jonel Urso, and for the last 8 years, I've been working mostly with the Romanian community, trying to get them to understand better their rights as European citizens in Denmark. Because, of course, whenever you go to a country, you first learn about your obligations, responsibilities, but very little about your rights. So that's what I'm going to present today, your rights as a European citizen in, let's say in this case, Denmark.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adrian, for joining us. He has also been doing this tour around the country in the other 9 events on the other project, Unity University Cafes. So where we were also discussing as part of the event about European Union citizenship. So we have, let's just say, talked about this subject quite a lot in the last month, and now we are trying to go a bit deeper into it. It's like taking it a bit further. And to mention, this course will also be available online. In the next couple of days, we will launch it online, and then you will be able to follow it at your own pace. So if you feel like you haven't understood something today, we're not going to be able to go very deep into each part because we only have 3 hours available that we can use. But you will have the opportunity to go deeper if you so desire to do so. So that's just to know. Unfortunately, Niels is not with us yet here. He's actually the person who designed the course as you see it. Not the graphics, but the content behind. And then we had Adela that designed the actual graphics of the presentation. So this is us. We tried our best to put something together for the internationals living here in Denmark. I will start with my part. My part is that I wanted us to look at institutions, at symbols, and opportunities. So for the next hour until 3:15, until it's Adrian's turn, I will be the one leading the conversation, let's say. And we will start with what will be known as Module 3 in the online course that will be available in the next couple of days. So let's start. Yeah. So when you think of European Union, what does it mean? Because when you think of France, you think of the language, you think of Paris, you think of the territory, you think maybe of the flag. But when you think of European Union, what comes to your mind? What is European Union? Because you hear often in the media, in the mouths of the politicians, oh, it's the Union, it's the European Union who has forced us to do this. It's there, it's in the European Union. You always can see that some people say, oh, it's not here, it's there in the European Union, even though technically or literally it is there. They are already inside of the European Union. So for many people, it's still like a vague concept. What is European Union? Does anyone want to try to give a definition of what they think European Union is? Susanna, maybe you want to try. What do you think is European Union?
Well, as far as I know, the European Union is a conglomerate of states laying in the same geographical area, more or less, and which have the same, they don't have borders in between one state and another, and it's possible to do some commerce and to travel along the countries with the identity card.
Super. Thank you so much, Susanna. Yes, that's a good resume you can say of how European Union is perceived. European Union, you can say, is rooted in two things: treaties. So basically, understandings between between the member states of how should they be working together in this framework, and institutions which were built upon the treaties. So basically, that's why often you can hear the Commission, the Parliament, the European Council. All of those things represent European Union, because in the end, it's very difficult to say where is European Union? It's outside of Denmark. No, it's inside of Denmark. It's everywhere you look around. All of us that live here can be called Europeans, right? All the member states that are within EU, all their territories can be called European Union. So literally, we are European Union. There's no other way to look at it. So to be able to kind of touch the concept, because it's very difficult to say we are both Denmark, but we're also European Union. So you need something else. So that's why it's very well to look at the institutions. It's an easier way to understand European Union if you look at institutions as the source of the European Union power. And then if you look at the four institutions I have mentioned there, well, you have the European Commission. The European Commission is like the guardian of the treaties. Their main role is to ensure that we follow, that the treaties are implemented, and every law that they propose somehow is rooted within those treaties that have been agreed between the member states. The nearest thing you can say, it's a government. So if you look at the European Commission, that's like the European government. That's the closest thing you have to kind of describe what the European Commission is. They even have a bit more power than many governments, because some governments don't have the right to initiate laws, while on the European Union level, the Commission has the right to initiate laws, legislation. Actually, only they have such a right, which is also strange because in other countries, the parliament has the right to initiate laws. The European Parliament, unfortunately, does not have the right to initiate laws. They have to wait for the Commission to initiate, and then they can debate and make amendments to it, but they cannot initiate laws, which sucks. I hope that will change in the future. It's definitely not a finished project. It's ongoing and it's changing all the time. When you think of the council, is basically you have this European Council where you have all the member state leaders together. You can think of it like a prime minister position. Everyone in the European Council together form, let's just say, what in a member state will be the position of a prime minister, because they are the ones who kind of set the political framework. In which direction do we go as a nation? So all of us, including Denmark, France, Italy, have one leader in that European Council, which is literally either the prime minister or the president of the country, which is present there. And then you have obviously the Council of the European Union, which is basically, it has many rooms, because let's say the Committee of Agriculture represents all the agriculture ministers in Europe from each country. The Committee of Finance represents all the finance ministers from each European member state. The European Parliament and the Council of the Ministers, or Council of the European Union, however you want to name it, you can see them as two rooms of the legislative process. Like, in some countries you have the Parliament and the Senate. In Denmark, we don't have a Senate, but some countries have this second room, let's say. The Council of Ministers, you can be seen as the room of the nations, and then the Parliament is the room of European citizens, because we vote for the Parliament directly. We don't vote for the Council of Ministers, because those are sent by member states directly. So that's why you can see that the Parliament is like the Chamber of Deputies, and the Council of Ministers is like the Senate. Yeah, just so you have like some sort of things that you're more familiar with when you understand the institutions. And then you have the European Court of Justice, which in my opinion is our best ally for us as EU citizens living in Denmark, because there was a period before the previous two governments. There was a period when there was someone in the integration ministry who decided to make life really hard for non-Danish people in Denmark. So they try their absolute best to make life hard for us, but they couldn't. So they only end up harming non-Europeans through their more than 100 rules, extra rules they have put in place. They even celebrated that by cake. It was quite of a controversy back in the day. But the point is, we as European Union citizens have not been affected by those rules, no matter how much they try, because the European Court of Justice has been on our side. European law is supreme, is above all national laws, and therefore, when we are in Denmark, as European Union citizens, European law is protecting us. It's like a defense, you can say, a visual, like an invisible defense scout. I don't know how to call it in English properly, but it's like it's our best friend, and it actually, for us as European Union citizens, the European Court of Justice has done more than any of the other institutions, because it was thanks to the European Court of Justice judges that we have all these rights that we have today. Many of them are not derived from political decisions. To be honest, the most fundamental right that came from political decision was the freedom of movement. But everything else that came afterwards was obtained by workers going in front of the European Court of Justice, suing member states, suing companies, winning those cases, and then out of it derive new rights being derived out of those rulings. So that's kind of what happened in the 60s, in the 70s, and that's how we end up today having, let's just say, this extensive European Union citizenship and the many rights that are associated with it. We will start with looking a little bit into the European Commission. So, European Commission, the government, right? It's quite simple. Obviously, the European Commission has started with Europe itself, all right? On 9th of May in 1950, I know it says 1951 in there when the actual European Council Committee was established, but it was 9th of May 1950 when, let's just say, the famous words were said that European people should come together and they should build a union to prevent war, because we had war for more than 5 centuries before that in Europe, and let's just say that rivers of blood have fallen upon these territories. And thanks to this invention, many people actually call the European Union one of the greatest inventions in European history, in human history, because it literally stopped war between most of the larger countries in Europe. It kind of forced them to be together, to live and kind of survive together in the global context. The European Commission itself is that, as I said, they have this power, the executive power. They can initiate a law, and they also have to make sure that the treaties are being respected. That's pretty much to sum it up. And it started to get more and more power with each treaty. So every time there was a new treaty passed, as you can see, there was like in the Rome Treaty, it was like the Single European Act in 1986, the 1992, the Maastricht Treaty, which is very important for us as European citizens, because that's when officially we kind of had this concept of European Union citizens. Every treaty that has been passed has reinforced the powers of the European institutions. It has slowly built them up to actually have some sort of influence and some sort of impact in our life. Because it's very difficult in the early ages, in the early decades of the Union, it was quite difficult for them to directly impact our life. But the more we as citizens have put pressure on the member states to allow the institutions to grow, the more they have developed further. So you can say that it's kind of the European Union, let's say in the beginning, it was given this right to some people. The coal and steel workers, they got the right to move freely within among the borders of the 6 founding member states. And then, so they became like the first EU citizens. And then it was them who led the let's just say the evolution of the European Union, because so it was first like EU created the citizens, but then the citizens defined the EU as it is looking today. because at the beginning EU was like, let's just say, a very weak institution that had very little power in front of the member states. But then thanks to all these people moving around the union, putting pressure on various member states, thanks to them, the union has evolved to what it is today. And it's still not finished. The fact that now more than, I think we are almost 20% of the EU population lives in another member state. So it's thanks to that fact, now the union is talking about going even further, right? Becoming even more consolidated, because it's still unfinished due to the fact that it's always like a compromise to make sure that the change is not too fast, that the people in a certain member state don't feel like, oh, the union is too strong or we give away too much sovereignty. So that's why always there has been some sort of compromise going on. And that's not ideal, because when you have compromise in place, a lot of things are kind of, let's just say, they're a little bit good for some, a little bit good for others, but not perfectly good for everyone. That's basically what how compromise looks. And that's why if you ever look at the union, there's all sort of strange quirks. Just imagine it's because the union itself is the result of compromise, is the result of negotiation between the different member states who are at different development stages, at different political realities, and they each have to navigate very sensitive political agendas when they decide on a European level to be able to come home and still maintain power or not awaken any sort of anti-European movements and whatnot. That's why, for example, the capital of European Union and the seat of the European Parliament, it's not in Brussels, it's in Strasbourg, right? It's in France. France was very keen on the fact that it's not Brussels, it's Strasbourg. So even though literally all the other institutions, well, not all, but for example, Court of Justice is in Luxembourg, but in some other agencies and whatnot, they're also spread around. But most of the major EU institutions are in Brussels. The European Parliament is also in Brussels, but because the seat of the European Parliament is in Strasbourg, once a month they have to go, all of them there, pretend like they are using the building for like a week, and then go back to Brussels. Thanks to this, thanks to this compromise that was made, I don't know how many decades ago. And that's just one example of compromises. And that's why sometimes the union is not, let's just say, perfect. There is a lot of rough edges around the union, and that's kind of what awakens a lot of criticism on against the project itself. But you have to understand that these situations have been brought by the member states. It's thanks to their negotiations, it's thanks to their agreements that we have certain situations today. It's not like there was some other European Union people who are neither French or German or any other member states. They are somehow from another outer world. They came here and they decided this is how we do it, and this is how we rule, and you have to either obey or move away. No, I know that's kind of the idea being spread around the society in some places, but that's not the case, to be honest. It's quite simple. The union that we have today is the union that we have created ourselves. And if we want to complain, we should complain to our own member states and ask them to do better. Ask them to get better things out of the negotiations they have with other member states. It's really not smart to direct your criticism towards, let's just say, an institution that cannot do much about its own function, because it's still the people of Europe, it's still the member states who decide a lot of the things that happen in the union. I mean, think about it. The European Commission, the so-called government of European Union, every member state has one commissioner, right? So each member state has a minister there. Great. Second thing, remember who decides the legislation. It's the Commission who initiates it, and then you have the Parliament, where we literally vote people directly there. And then you have the Council of Ministers, the second room, which is literally ministers from our own member states who are directly involved in how the law is made. And then you have the European Council, who sets the direction, the political direction of the Union, which is our heads of states that we have elected through in each of us in our own member states. So in the end, we are literally part of every aspect, or every, let's just say, part of how things are being decided in the Union. So it's not just some technocrats in some big white towers in Brussels who decide our life and everything that happens. We literally send those people from Copenhagen, from Berlin, from Bucharest to those so-called white towers of Brussels to decide for us. And what they send us back, well, then we have to wonder ourselves, who are we sending there? Why are they not very good at what they're doing? Instead of saying, oh my God, those bad institutions. Poor institutions have no fault. They are just there. We are filling them up with people from the member states. So we should think of the people that we send there and less of the institutions themselves. Just FY, yeah. Then, just so we go quickly through the European Commission, you probably have heard of Ursula von der Leyen. She is the president of the European Commission. When we're talking about outside of European Union, she's a lot more present, or she's invited obviously to all the global, let's just say, events that are happening. And many times we have, let's say, global crisis. She's also the one that kind of leads the way for, I don't know, humanitarian help. Or you probably have noticed her or have heard of her during the pandemic when there was all those global concerts and whatnot, or efforts to gather money. So Ursula von der Leyen is the president of the European Commission. How did she become such president? How she got in this position? Well, she is, first of all, the commissioner of Germany. So Germany selected the commissioner, and that was her. And then the European Council, the people, our heads of state, they decided that she should be the president. So in the end, it's kind of decided by our own elected heads of state. And then we have Josep Borrell. He was the commissioner of Spain. Is the commissioner of Spain, and he got the position of high representative. Basically, he is the foreign minister of Europe. So he's involved in the diplomatic relationships that European Union has with the non-European countries. He's our representative. And then we have obviously Margrethe Vestager. She's the Danish commissioner. She's probably the most powerful commissioner Denmark ever had, and one of the commissioners left a huge mark. I mean, you probably all have heard of what she has done against the big corporations, how she managed to get many of them to actually pay tax in Europe. Many of them never paid tax before, like Google or Starbucks or McDonald's. And for the first time, thanks to her efforts, we have seen those big tech corporations paying tax in Europe, just like any other company, which should have been a normal fact. It seems someone had to do something about it. Unfortunately, she's on the way out in a way, because her mandate obviously ends on 9th of June 2024, when we have the next set of European Parliament elections. And then from what I heard, the current government of Denmark would like to nominate someone that's from their own ranks. Margrethe Vestager is from Radikale Venstre. She's a social liberal, and Radikale Venstre right now is not in government, and it's quite far away from dreaming of government. So therefore, yeah, she's not continuing, which is too bad, because as I said, she's been one of the best Danish commissioner we ever had. She's even the vice president of the European Commission, which means that whenever Ursula von der Leyen cannot be there, she's technically our leader, our European leader. Yes. And then we have the function of the Commission. I kind of went quickly through that. It's quite simple. They propose laws. They also implement laws, because, as I said, they're also like a government. So each commissioner is the head of a directorate general, which is like a ministry, if you think about it. So they can come up with ideas to what laws should be there. And then once those laws have been passed, they are responsible to implement them. So that's kind of their role, their function. They also are obviously in charge of proposing the EU budget, just like any government does. They decide, okay, how the budget should look like, and then the parliament has the role of approving it. And then it's still the commission who has to implement the budget. They decide which funding lines should be open, what money should be prioritized where and whatnot. And obviously they have this role of international relations to represent the union abroad. So because they have this foreign ministry position, the high representative within their ranks. And then if you're wondering how can you interact with the commission, actually the commission is happy to include citizens who are active and who want to be part of the conversation. You have public consultations. So if you literally write public consultations EU Commission on Google, you will find the current consultations on the proposal they want to make to the parliament. Because before they even submit a proposal to the parliament, like a new legislative idea, they ask the people, hey, we want to propose this. What do you think? Do you have any inputs? There is even you as a citizen, if you show that you have a certain level of knowledge on a certain field, you could be invited to be an expert even. So there's all sorts of expert panels that you can join as a citizen to influence kind of the legislative process. So if you have time and if you have the desire, you can join public consultations. They are in 3 official languages, so you can participate either with English, French, or German, and you can be part of the conversation. There's also this thing called citizens dialogues. They are being organized in various EU member states and a lot in Brussels, obviously. You can also join those. Is where the commissioners meet citizens and try to debate ideas for the future, trying to understand, okay, what is needed in society? What do we need to do work on next? And then you have the delegations. Your EU Commission has its own, let's say, representatives in each member state. And you can, if you're interested to come closer to what the European Commission does, you're free to contact them and they can give you information. They can tell you what's being worked on right now. How can you be involved in one way or another? And the last thing, obviously, you can directly contact the commission via social media. They are quite active actually on Facebook, and I'm not sure if there's other social media platforms. I'm pretty sure they are. I'm not using them, but you can definitely write to them directly and see if you have any ideas, because you're a European Union citizen and you have the power to go directly and tell them, hey guys, what if we do things this way? And then they will be able to consider it or not in the whole process, or even see if there's maybe the subject open already in some sort of law, and maybe your idea could become an amendment to that specific law. So there's a lot of ways for you to actually directly influence how we govern and what rules we make for our life in the European Union. So yeah, that's the commission, and I hope you got a clear understanding of what the purpose for it is. Because next we're going to go into something a bit more complicated, and that's the councils. Why are we calling them the councils? Because there's 3 of them. There is the European Council, there is the Council of the European Union, and there's the Council of Europe. There's 3 of them. People keep confusing them, especially when you try to translate them in various languages of the Union. It gets even more messy, to be honest. And even the European Council and the Council of European Union have even the same logo, which, yeah, makes it even more complicated. But it's quite simple. Council of Europe it's actually the oldest institution we have in Europe, and it's not connected to the Union whatsoever. The Council of Europe, whenever you hear the Council of Europe has recommended, is because the Council of Europe purpose is to kind of defend human rights in Europe. And they have absolutely no, let's just say, they cannot comply member states of the European Union to follow their recommendations. That's for sure. They, at best, they can give ideas, they can give recommendations, and that's the end of it. So, and in Council of Europe, it's literally all the geographical European countries, including Russia. It's part of the Council of Europe. However, Russia right now obviously it's being suspended from there because human rights is not exactly something they excel at these days. But so you get the idea of why the Council of Europe is not part of the discussion. So we put that on a side. Whenever you hear Council of Europe, no, nothing to do with the Union. Maximum what they can do is come up with ideas on human rights, democracy. Then we go back to these two councils. You have the European councils where you have the heads of states coming together, and you can hear, oh, now there's an EU summit going on. The Prime Minister of Denmark and the Prime Minister of Italy are meeting together with all the other leaders discussing whatnot crisis. It's because the European Council has the purpose to come up with the political direction of the Union. If someone wants, for example, there was this idea that we should put public health in Europe somehow on a European level, because today the public health is a competence of the member states. But public health is difficult to maintain it just at the borders, right? Because imagine the physical borders, and then you have this pandemic that goes from one border, one corner of Europe to the other. It's difficult for member states to kind of have unique competence over public health. So there was the discussion, what should we do about it? Should we give competence also to the European institutions on public health? And that was only the European Council who could allow this idea to exist, and then the European Commission to be able to make a proposal about it. So you see, it all kind of, any big changes, they need to derive from the Council, which is a bit unfortunate because in the most important decisions for the future of Europe, the member states have a veto right. So even if 26 member states are, yay, great idea, if the 27th says no, the idea dies there immediately. That's why Hungary, for example, proves itself to really use their veto rights lately. It was also United Kingdom before, when they were part of the Union. They used their veto rights 75 times. They stopped many legislations from happening with their veto rights, which is quite sad. They actually very slowed down a lot the development of the Union. So in the minds of some of the people who are, let's just say, acquainted with the history of Europe, they were quite happy to see the United Kingdom go, because they were one of the main reasons of why the development of the Union was so slow, and it was more going into devolution instead of evolution. But no, that's another discussion. And then you have the Council of the European Union, which is the ministers of each member state gathering in various, just say, formations. If we have to discuss foreign affairs, then we have all the foreign affairs ministers coming. If we have to discuss a crisis in health, all the health ministers are coming to discuss. If the European Commission has proposed a law, then the Parliament has looked at it, and then it's now their turn to look at it and see, okay, do we agree? Do we not agree? Do we send it back to the Parliament? And the Parliament can send it back, and then they have to meet together and be like, okay, how do we get over it and make this law pass? So that's why sometimes you heard this term watering down. Watering down means literally taking away from the power of one. Let's just say when the Commission made the law, it had a certain impact, a certain vision. By the time it finally became a directive or a regulation or a decision, by that time it kind of lost most of its power, because it had to be watered down so more member states can agree with it. That's the unfortunate thing of having a lot of member states. And that's why the discussion right now is that maybe moving forward in the future, we should try to move away from consensus, where virtually every member state has to agree, to qualified majority, where like let's just say 66% of the member states, if they agree, that's good enough. We shouldn't have this consensus block the development of the union. And then moving forward, yeah, I kind of already covered the European Council, and I covered obviously the Council of European Union, so there's no point to look at it. And then let's look at the European Parliament, because this is the voice of the people, right? You keep hearing that yeah, in different conversations. It's literally the one institution we can directly elect, and yeah, we can directly know who we voted for and who we can address if we want to talk to them. And it's the most democratic institution that we have on a European level. Unfortunately, it has been a long way until the parliament that we see today, which is also still not very powerful, to be honest. It's because, you know, in the beginning, the European Parliament was just an institution where the member states were sending various, let's say, members of the European Parliament. They were nominated by the member states. So they were just, it was made more like a prestige position for some politicians or from national politics to retire at. So that was quite sad. That was the beginning of the European Parliament. But then in the 70s, there was a lot of, let's just say, civil society activism across the entire union. Young people especially have kept asking that the union must be more democratic. The union must be more democratic. So they actually pushed the member states to allow direct voting for the European Parliament, which was a huge gain. And first time that it happened was in 1979. And it was after I think it was like 300,000 people were out on the streets of Berlin, Paris, Rome, asking for this to happen. So it was the people in the end, as I said, who made all these things to be. Okay, so the European Parliament, first time we could vote for it was in 1979, and actually it was a woman, was Simone Veil, one of the, let's just say, founding mothers of the union, who got nominated as the first president of the first directly elected parliament. So you see, it's the moment the people got the power, it was the people who brought even gains on equality. Just to give an example. So that's pretty much the history of the European Parliament. It slowly gained more and more power, but still it lacks the power to initiate laws, which is quite a big minus, because literally or virtually every other parliament in the member states has this power. Yeah, we will have soon elections, right, for the European Parliament, 9th of June, 2024. And you will have two choices. You can either vote for a Danish candidate, but then you need to kind of sign up on an electoral roll here in Denmark. So you need to actually opt in, unfortunately. So it's not like you can opt out, because you need to do it. Otherwise, they don't know that you want to vote here. And then the second thing is that you can either vote for someone from your home member state where you have your citizenship. And that can only be done by going to the embassy, or in some cases, I heard you can vote electronically. I think if you're from Estonia, in some countries, you can send your vote by mail, which is quite cool. But in some countries, you might only be able to go to the embassy to vote, which means a trip to Copenhagen. So probably the easiest way will be to just sign up here in Denmark to vote. All you have to do is just go to the border service, say, I would like to be registered for the electoral roll. Do that before March, I think end of March next year, to be able to have the right to vote here. And then you'll just go to the nearest voting section to you, and then you'll vote just like any other, let's say, local here. So, and by the way, when you hear this MEP, it's literally member of the European Parliament. It's just a shortcut of it. In some countries, actually, of the union, in some member states of the union, the voting age actually is at 16. So if you're from Austria, Belgium, Germany, or Malta, you can actually vote from 16. So even, let's say that you are here in I don't know, exchange, or you're studying high school here in Denmark, you might not be able to vote for a Danish candidate, but you can vote for a candidate from your home state. So that can be an option. And also, if you're 17, for example, you can vote in Greece. So let's say you're from Denmark and you move to Greece. You're still not 18, but you're 17 while you're in Greece on 9th of June 2024. You can vote there for a local Greek candidate. How awesome that is, right? The fact that you can take advantage of both European and local law depending on how it suits you, more or less. When members of the European Parliament get, let's just say, elected, not just say, they actually get elected from the 27 member states, they join European political groups. So in the parliament, you don't have the Romanian members of the parliament, the Danish members of the parliament. They don't sit together in one group. That would be strange. No, everyone joins different political groups based on what their ideology is. Are you social democrat? You go to the social democrats. Are you conservative? You go to the conservatives. Are you populist? You go to the populists, and so on. So everyone kind of finds its own political group that's transnational, because their purpose there is to represent the citizens of Europe, not necessarily the French, the Germans, the Danes, and so on. There's 705 of them, so it's quite large, the European Parliament, and Denmark has 14 currently, but it will have 15 members from the next round of elections. And then I mean, there's the president of the parliament, of course, but to be honest, it's more of a administrative position. I don't see it as a very powerful position in my mind. That's why very few people know who the president of the parliament even is. So yeah. And then you have obviously all these committees. Basically, like every MEP has to join different committees, maybe 2 or 3 maximum each, where depending on what their interest is. So because there's 705 members of the parliament. Yes, when they vote amendments to a law, everyone has to be present in the plenary, more or less. But it's not everyone that is directly involved to the amendments to that specific law. It's just a small minority who has any sort of knowledge about the subject. So let's say that's why you can keep hearing, oh, he's the rapporteur on health for this party. He's the rapporteur on environment. He's the rapporteur on, I don't know, housing. All this, the reason for it is because if there's a new law proposal about environment, it's going to be me, the person, the rapporteur on environment, who has to follow what's happening there, maybe come up with amendments and involve experts and whatnot. And then I'll tell my colleagues, how should we vote? Well, on this amendment, we all vote this way. On this amendment, we vote this way. Because it's not possible that every member of the European Parliament or any council is able to follow every legislative initiative, right? Everyone has to find where they can excel the best. So let's say maybe you had a background in climate policy, you have worked with climate implementation, then it makes sense that if you get elected in the European Parliament, you will be representing, you'll be joining a committee about climate, because, well, you also have all this background experience, and it makes sense for you to be there. But some people just choose sometimes committees based on their own aspirations. So if you see that there is a huge European health crisis, obviously the health committee in that period will become very important. It will give the chance for a lot of big progress on the field, and that would make the chance for a certain politician to put its name on very popular ideas, and obviously that would be good for his political career. So you can either be strategic or you can be going for what you feel most comfortable with when you get elected. And any of you could be running for the European Parliament. You can also run for European Parliament here in Denmark. So you don't actually have to be a Danish citizen to run for European Parliament. If a party decides to nominate you, they have the right to do so. Funny enough, it has never happened. Hopefully, it will sometime happen in the future. But right now, I looked at the list of the candidates from each political party, and unfortunately, none of them is a non-citizen. Everyone is a Danish citizen so far. Let's move forward. Yeah, as I said, what's the purpose of the European Parliament? It's legislation, making amendments to the laws presented by the Commission. It has a supervisory law. Basically, they have to look at every other institution of the Union and see how are they doing. So there's someone actually watching them. And then they have this budgetary role of approving the budget. So they can come up with like, oh, the European citizens would like more money for Erasmus+. So then they can try their best to push the Commission to increase the amounts allocated, for example, for Erasmus+. And how can you interact with the Parliament? Well, you can vote directly. You can run for election, so you could be part of the Parliament if you want to be so. You can make petitions. There is actually even a petition system. There is even a petition committee in the Parliament, where all the petitions submitted by the citizens are being discussed. You can take direct contact. If you go to the European Parliament webpage, you can find the contact to literally every member of the Parliament. So you could take contact with them, send them emails, call them, and so on. And you can also visit the Parliament. They have a special unit dedicated for citizens visits. They have all sorts of very interactive rooms and whatnot, so you better understand how things work on the European level. It's quite cool. There's even this European House of History, which is really amazing, and I very much recommend to you to go. It's free. It's free to visit the Parliament. It's free to visit the European House of History. So whenever you go to Brussels, I definitely recommend that you go and see these two institutions. And then we go to the last part, which is the Court of Justice of the European Union. You'll be surprised, but the members of the Court of Justice is that every member state literally sends a judge for 6 years in the Court of Justice. So once again, it's all the member states who have a direct access, and whenever the European Court of Justice takes a decision, keep in mind that all the judges that are there, every member state has one in there. So everyone, let's just say, cannot say that, oh, they made a ruling against Denmark. It must be because Denmark has absolutely, yeah, they have something with Denmark. No, Denmark also has a judge there. So it's not about that they have a problem with Denmark. Denmark lost because, yeah, rule of law was not on their side in that specific case. And that's the same with France and Germany and whatnot. So keep that in mind. The Court of Justice is not made out of, how to call them, aliens, people who are not part of any member state. They just came from somewhere else. No. I will not stay too long on the Court of Justice because simply it's quite of a complex subject, and that's not the purpose. You just should know that they have been on our side since the 60s, and they have been the ones who brought the most progress for European citizens. And we should acknowledge them for that. We talked already about how legislation works and how a law becomes or comes to be in the European Union. Just to remind you, there is the Commission initiates, the European Parliament and the Council of the European Union, the Council of Ministers can make amendments and have to approve the law. there can be three types of, let's just say, European laws. You have regulation, which literally from the moment it's approved, it's applied on the entire territory of the Union, and it doesn't have to be somehow implemented into national law. Then you have directives. Directives have to be implemented into national law, and that allows the national parliaments to make, let's just say, small changes to fit the reality of each member state. So that's why sometimes a European directive might look a bit different in the way it has been interpreted in a German parliament or in a Danish parliament. Yeah, that's so you understand why there's sometimes differences in how EU law is being applied. And then you have decisions. Decisions are also applying. They don't have to be implemented into national law. And those things are like about a certain person or a certain institutions. They are very directed, let's just say. And obviously, after the law has been passed, the Commission has the responsibility to implement the law. Let's just go quickly to the, I already told you that the Commission is how it's being selected. We will go to the EU Ombudsman, because if you feel like any EU institution has mistreated you, or you feel like they haven't followed their own rule of conduct, their own rules, laws, there is an institution called the EU Ombudsman, which you can contact if you feel like you have something to complain about. And then they will have to take your case. There is such an institution at every level of, let's just say, administration. There is a national Danish ombudsman, there is a regional one, there is a local one. So, for example, if the municipality of Aarhus has mistreated you, or they haven't respected certain things, you can always go to your, just go with the lawyer of the people, the local lawyer of the people, or the local advisor, and complain and open a case against the municipality in there. So just so you know that there is such a thing you can use, and it's on your side. And then I went so far through the EU institutions because it's important to understand where many opportunities come from, because it is these EU institutions who can propose a lot of them, who implement a lot of them, and where these ideas originate from. So that's why it's important for you to understand, okay, when you talk about European Union, who are you talking about? And my suggestion is go and check out what each institution has to offer, because there's a lot of ways for you as a citizen to have a say, literally. Very quickly, we'll go with EU symbols, because there's still people who believe that the stars on the EU flag, they are from, I don't know why, they think that those are the number of member states in Europe. No. Round is the symbol of unity in European mythology. 12 is symbol of perfection, right? Also in European understanding. So the 12 gold stars on a blue background, they stand for unity, solidarity, and harmony among the people of Europe. It's not about the number of member states. We are not United States of, well, just United States of America. Yeah. So we are not United States of Europe to have one star for each member state. And then you have, obviously, the hymn, the anthem of Europe, which is the music to the Ode to Joy. So it's not the lyrics to this Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Ode to Joy, but it's the music itself. So it's because in the universal language of music, this anthem represents or expresses the European ideals of freedom, peace, and solidarity. So that's why to be aware of what the anthem is. And obviously the last symbol is the euro. I know that not every member state has the euro yet. It's only 20 out of 27 who have the euro today. But it's still a symbol of Europe, because, well, you have the Greek letter epsilon, E, which is basically the first letter in the word Europe, and then you have the two parallel lines who literally signify stability. So if you think about the dollar, right, how every person identifies the dollar sign, now the euro sign is also like a symbol of ours. So that was so far the module 3. I gone a bit quickly through it. Normally it should take at least an hour to be able to properly go and understand the institutions and the symbols, but once you do understand how the Europe functions, it will allow you to better understand when you hear news about Europe, or you hear local politicians, or you hear national media talk about European Union and European laws and European decisions, it'll be easier for you to understand critically about it. Okay, is this real, or they're trying to brainwash me some way? It's always good for you to have the knowledge to be able to assess what is happening. So before we move forward, I would like to ask if there's any questions about what has been discussed so far. Otherwise, I can prepare the next part quickly. Okay, if there's no questions, then we can move forward to the second part, the module 4, as we call module 4 in the EU citizenship course. I don't have a lot of minutes for this module 4, but all of you will get the slides, and you will also have access to videos of each, let's just say, module that you can watch later at your own convenience. So in module 4, we are discussing about opportunities. You have to understand that when we are talking about the European level, there are really a lot of ways for you to benefit. Depends a lot on your, let's just say, level of involvement and creativity. If you are under 35, you are young according to European standards, which means every youth program there is applies for you. And believe me, there is a lot of them. Myself, I traveled most of my 20s without ever spending a penny from my pocket, and I traveled most of the world. Obviously, I haven't traveled for fun. I haven't traveled as a tourist. I travel with a purpose, being part of various projects. But still, if you are not in the position to be a tourist, but you still dream to see the world, European Union is there for you. So for us who come from, let's just say, more poorer backgrounds, there is a way for us to also kind of break through and take advantage of being European. And so that's what I'm most grateful for. That's why, in a way, I kind of explain my attachment to the union, is that it gave me all these opportunities to kind of do whatever I dreamed to do with my life. Okay, so just to go forward, it's quite simple. One, if you want to go somewhere, that means you want to to use the right for mobility, the free movement, right? A lot of, let's just say, funding is kind of rooted into the idea of free movement. So let's say that there's various directions. Let's say that you are under 30 years old, you feel like you don't know what to do with your life yet, and you would like to go to Bulgaria to milk goats for 6 months. You can apply to the European Solidarity Corps. You can join some farm down there in Bulgaria, and for 6 months you'll get first of all your travel costs covered, and you'll get your life costs covered in Bulgaria, so that you can enjoy this opportunity and maybe search for whatever you're searching for in your life. Let's give another example. Let's say that you dream to have your own business, right? You don't have yet a business, you just have a business idea, and you would like to learn from from someone in the same field. Let's say maybe you are a fashion designer and you dream to start your own company down here in Denmark. Well, there is a program called Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs. This program, don't get confused by the name young. It's literally for everyone. You can be 99 years old if you want to apply for this program. You apply to the program, and up to 1 year, you can get your travel and life expenses covered to go, for example, to Milano, to an established fashion designer firm, and learn from them how things are being done. So just so I understand, so you go there, you job shadow, you learn, you come back, maybe even you have a partnership with the firm in Milano, and you start your own company in Denmark. I find that to be a very good opportunity if you're still trying to figure out how your business should look like, and if you would like to learn from someone from the same field, but you, let's just say you cannot afford to go with your own money to Milano to do that. So as I said, it's an opportunity. If you have a business idea, go for it. Other examples. Let's say that you are a creative person and you want to make your own documentary about something. I don't know what. You can actually go to a EU funding program called Creative Europe and apply for funding to make your documentary. You can apply for funding to make movies, to make games, to write books, to design animations, and whatever else cultural can be considered cultural. I don't know, make music, for example, and so on. So there's all sorts of fundings for cultural ideas, and that's the source of it is Creative Europe. Even Game of Thrones, if you have watched Game of Thrones, a lot of it has been financed by Creative Europe, and that's why they were kind of forced to use a lot of European sites for their filming. So just to understand that Game of Thrones has been brought to the world thanks to the taxpayers' money from the European Union. Other situations where you could use European Union. Let's see. You have a great. Let's say you're an engineer and you have come up now with some new way of doing something, right? Something innovative, but you don't have the money to develop that thing. You have it on paper, you have the concept, it looks great, but you know it will cost you 2 million euros to make it happen. You don't have 2 million euros. Well, there is programs like Horizon Europe, like COSME, like Eurostars, various programs for business where you can try to get funding for research development, right? So make your idea into reality and then even profit on it. So even though you has kind of brought you and made you have that product, you can still afterwards turn it into a company and make it into a business. You don't have to give those 2 million euros back. Why are they doing that? Because it's in the interest of the union to support research and to support innovation, because it lifts all of us as a society. So obviously that they are pouring money into that. So just so you know, another thing is, if you want to travel, but you're 35 plus, what I suggest to you is that you join an association or some European NGO or some local national association. It's up to you. Many associations or civil society in general can send people to various training seminars, symposiums, whatnot with EU money. So if your dream is to go to Malaga and see it, but you cannot afford to go there, well, maybe combine pleasure with utility and go for a symposium on how music influences the development of young people, and also get that travel and costs covered through it. So that's something for you to consider. So as I said, if we're talking about mobility, there's many different ways for you to get some sort of EU funding to make it happen. What else could be there? If you're a student, obviously, you can go for Erasmus Plus. That's the most common known, let's just say, semester abroad, or you can go for an internship abroad with EU money, or yeah, internship abroad. If you are working for you're a carpenter, you work here for you're a young carpenter, and you would like to go to Sweden. I don't know why I chose Sweden, it's too close, maybe Spain, to learn some new technique on how they do carpentry in Spain. Then your company can apply for Erasmus Plus grants to send you for 3 months or 6 months to Spain to learn something new and then bring it back to the company. So as I said, there's various ways for you to take advantage of being a European Union citizen that you should be researching. We will send to you, and you will also see in the online course, there will be a slide with literally all the EU funding programs that you could look into it. There is even like I wouldn't call it like an exhaustive search tool, but there is already a search tool that tries to kind of gather all the different opportunities, but it's not perfect. There's still things missing. So that's always good for you to understand what do you need, because do you want to travel? That's one way. Do you have an idea for whatever, be that business, culture, society, and then try to think, can EU help me make this happen? That's kind of where your thinking should be when you address EU funding. And in every region, literally every region of Europe, we have these EU offices. So let's say if you are from north of Denmark, there is, if you write on Google, EU office North Denmark or North Denmark EU office on Google, you will find it. And they have lots of consultants who are hired with a purpose to let you know, okay, I have this idea, I'm looking for EU funding, can you help me understand which EU funding fits for what I need? So just so you keep that in mind. And I will go just quickly through the slides so you just understand what I'm talking about and what to expect in the online course. We will even put in the online course like a clear example of how someone wants to go to, let's say, Berlin in this case, and how they go about it to make it happen. And then you have all these EU funding opportunities for cultural ideas, for business ideas that you can look at and learn. There is we also going to have a small segment on how can you establish a European company. So if you have a company in Italy and you want to open now one in Denmark, you could actually unite two of them into one European company to follow only one set of rules instead of following being, okay, one administrative rules in Italy, one set of administrative rules in Denmark. You choose, do you follow Italian rules or Danish rules, which can be quite beneficial in for some of you. Yeah, and then how a company, for example, let's say you're a company, not only like a person, but a company itself wants to go and get money. There's money for green transition, there's money for digitalization that you can access. And we're going to give an example of how you can do that, for example, in the case of if you want to go green with your company. And the last thing I want to mention, oh, we have actually a question from Jason. I'm 27 years old and I'm working full-time in a Danish engineering company. How can I take advantage of Erasmus Plus? Well, it depends here, because, for example, if the Danish engineering company would like to send you abroad for 6 months or less, 3 months, to learn something new from another EU, from another similar engineering company in another EU country, you can apply through Erasmus. The company can apply for you to get this funding from Erasmus Plus to send you there for 3 months, 6 months, depends how long they are willing to let you go. So there's various agencies, institutions who have obtained this permit to be able to, let's just say, implement EU funding that you can address. So that's why, for example, if you're looking for more information, just you can always address the Erasmus Plus agency in, let's just say, Denmark in this case. And the very last thing I'm going to address before I let the word further to Adrian is banking, because I feel like this is one of the subjects that people are not super aware of, But you, as an EU citizen, have the right for a basic bank account in every EU member state, regardless if you work, live, or exist even in that member state. So if I wish to have 27 bank accounts, I can have 27 bank accounts. It's my own problem, and that's how online banking systems are basing themselves on. That's why you, for example, if you have Revolut, you have literally a bank account in Lithuania. Those online accounts don't exist in the air; they must exist somewhere. And in this case, in the case of Revolut, they exist in Lithuania. And if you're wondering, how do I have a bank account in Lithuania if I've never even seen the country? Well, it's thanks to this EU right. Second thing, insurance. You can buy insurance for anything from anywhere in Europe. So if you want house insurance from Spain for your house in Denmark, you can do that. If you want car insurance from Romania for your car in Denmark, you can do that, because insurance companies are private companies. Insurance services are private services, and they go under the single European market, which means that you as a consumer are allowed to acquire these services from anywhere they are in Europe. The problem here is that you need to convince those insurance companies to want to offer you this service in Denmark. Sometimes maybe, let's say, the Romanian company will not be so inclined to insure your very, very expensive Danish car or Danish house. So that's why it's a very, let's just say, little applied right. But if you find any sort of insurance company willing to do that, then nothing stops you. Also, you're allowed to have a loan, a bank loan, in every EU member state, regardless if you have lived there or not. So if you want to buy yourself a nice summer house in Spain, you can get yourself a loan in a Spanish bank for that beautiful future vacation home that you are getting. And obviously the same with investments. You are allowed to invest in any EU member state, regardless if you're there or not. And in general, anything that's private, think about it. If you know it's something is private, that means you should wonder, can I buy this from another member state? And most likely the answer will be yes. That was my part. I tried to go quickly through institutions, symbols, funding opportunities, and a little bit at the end about banking. So to give you like a overview from my side. I will stop my share here, and I will ask if there's any questions. You can leave them in the chat if you don't feel like being part of the conversation. And then I will invite Adrian to prepare his presentation further on.
Narcis, do you think you can continue sharing the slides? Because I have only the PDF file.
Oh, okay. Just a second. Let me resume recording.
Yes. As I said in the beginning, my name is Adrian Ionel Ursu, and I've been working with mainly the Romanian community here in Denmark, helping them to understand their rights in Denmark. I'm really interested. I was really interested in all the information that Narcis gave until now, because I was more focused on the rights we have, and I wasn't so much interested in how we got to have these rights. But today we're going to touch a bit the information about how we got the rights we have and what rights we have. We are going through 4 modules, and we're going to examine the rights that EU citizens have, and which treaties they are rooted in, and why are they so important for the many millions of European citizens living in other member states. I don't know if Narcis asked, because I wasn't here for a few minutes in the beginning. Do we have some non-Europeans in with us here today?
I don't think so.
No. So we are only Europeans here today. Fine. Anyway, we're going to touch very, very little also about the eventual rights that non-Europeans have, but also in connection with a European citizen. So what we're going to focus mostly on, it's the fundamental rights. Of course, we cannot touch all the rights we have as European citizens, because that's a lot of things to talk about, but we're going to scratch the surface and learn about the main rights, the fundamental rights we have as Europeans. These rights are enabling us to travel in another country, to work in another country, a European country, I mean, and live in any European country we wish. So if we want to go to live in whatever European country, we have this fundamental right. It is very important to note that these rights are, they might be different from one member state to another. And also the legal framework which gives us these rights, it's very, very complex, and sometimes it evolves over time. It evolves through EU directives and court decisions. So if you are a European citizen and have more specific questions about your rights in a specific state, then it's very important to consult with local authorities to get the most up-to-date and accurate informations. Before we dive further into our introduction into EU citizens' rights, let's take a look at the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights and what that is. The Charter of Fundamental Rights of European Union, I'm not going to go too much into details. This Charter of Rights came as a legal binding document, and it was declared in 2000 and came in force from December 2009, along with the Treaty of Lisbon. Article 2 of this treaty on European Union provides that the Union is founded on the values of respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, and respect for human rights, including the rights of persons belonging to minorities. And these values are common to the member states in a society in which pluralism, non-discrimination, tolerance, justice, solidarity, and equality between women and men prevail. So all the countries that adopted, that came into this union, all the countries, they have the same fundamental principles. So any country that wants to adhere to European Union, first of all, they have to adhere to all these principles: dignity, equality, all kind of freedoms, personal freedoms, justice, solidarity, and citizens' right. I don't know how you think, but many times I hear about people who are kind of upset with politicians, and many times they think that politicians make legislation, make laws, just to benefit themselves. But the center of European legislation is that all the laws that are coming into effect, they are made in such a way that the citizen has to benefit out of them. And in this case, we are the citizen that needs to benefit from all the laws. We can go to the next slide. And of course, the main right we have as a European citizen is the right to freely move between the countries. We can take a look at a very short history and how we got this right to freely move between the countries. So first of all, we have the Treaty of Rome, where the concept of free movement of workers was introduced. And through this treaty, they wanted to create a common labor market and support workers to go from one country to another and find work. Then we have the Maastricht Treaty, which formally established the European Union. And this treaty introduced the concept of European citizenship. This European citizenship granted individuals the right to move and reside freely within the territory of member states. Then we have in 1999, we have the Amsterdam Treaty, which kind of strengthened the concept of European citizenship and enhanced the rights of European citizens, furthering the right to move and reside freely within the member states. A very important point of this treaty from Amsterdam, it also introduced measures to combat discrimination on grounds of nationality. Even if we have this treaty now, and we're talking about 1999, of course, we all come from different backgrounds. We come from countries, we have we come from countries that have different backgrounds from other countries. And of course, when we're moving from one country to another, there's a risk that we can be seen as foreigners or intruders. But the European Union, through the Amsterdam Treaty, wanted to kind of level the field and introduce measures to combat discrimination. The Free Movement Directive from 2004 codifies and consolidates the rights of EU citizens and their family rights to move and freely reside in an European country. Let's say, and now we are going to talk mainly about Denmark, because every country in the European Union has the right to adopt special rules about how you are getting your permission to live in that country. In Denmark, in Denmark, if you want to come and live here, you must prove that you're not going to be a burden for the society, for the Danish society. So if you come to Denmark and prove that you have a job, and I think we can go to the next slide. If you come to Denmark and prove that you have a job, and this job is at least 10 to 12 hours per week, then you get the right to reside in Denmark. If you are coming to Denmark to study, you prove that you're here to study, and again, you prove that you can sustain yourself. No, we just stay at the first. Yeah, sorry for the. Of course, we're coming to that, but I just want to make a point about the how you get your residence permit in Denmark. So we have a job. If you have a job, you can get a residence permit. If you are a student, you can get your residence permit. If you have a person who's going to sustain you financially, and this person comes and gives a declaration saying, yes, I'm going to sustain this person, then again, you get the right to stay in Denmark. But also one more thing, you can get the right to stay in Denmark, the residence right, if you are proving that you have enough money in your bank account to sustain yourself and not be a burden for the society. So we have the right to reside in Denmark, and we have the right to work in Denmark or any European country. When you work in a country, of course, we're going to also talk about taxation. And when we're talking about taxation, because you pay some tax, of course, you need to have some benefits. Because you pay tax, you also need, and you have the right to get some benefits. And when we're talking about benefits, we can talk about pension, we can talk about family benefits, we can talk about healthcare, and so on. But let's stay at the working rights. And we're going to say that whenever you find a job in another country, you are entitled to equal treatment in recruitment, working condition, promotions, even pay, access to vocational training, occupational pension, and you have the employer must follow the same rules also in dismissal when you are going to get fired. For example, you cannot get fired in different conditions than the nationals of the country where you are working. Yes. Let's talk about taxation. We stay here at taxation. And I'm coming to Denmark to work here. And if I'm going to work for more than 185 days per year, and I'm going to live here more than 185 days per year, then I will have my fiscal residence here in Denmark, even if I am a national of another European country, in my case, Romania. So if I stay here and pay tax here, I also have the right to get the same tax reliefs and same tax exemption as any other resident, any other Dane in Denmark. I also have the possibility to complete a joint tax return with my spouse. If I'm coming from a country that Denmark has a special double taxation agreement, then all the tax that I'm paying in Denmark, when I'm going back home, and back home, Romania, let's say, says that I also have to pay tax there because I'm a citizen of Romania. Because of double taxation, I can prove that I pay tax in Denmark and I do not have to pay tax in Romania for the same income I had in Denmark. But if in Romania the tax is higher for that same income I had in Denmark, then I can get a deduction for the tax I paid in Denmark. Let's just take an example and say that I'm a student and I got a job in Denmark while I'm studying, and I'm going to stay here for more than 3 years, let's say, because I'm going to study for 3 years. Because I'm studying for 3 years in Denmark, I, a Romanian citizen living in Denmark, I'm paying tax on my income because, of course, I do not have enough money. I'm going to work in Denmark, and I'm going to pay tax in Denmark. My fiscal domicile is going to be Denmark. But during the summer, I have, let's say, a 3 months holiday during the summer. And during the summer, I'm going back to my home country, Romania, and get a job in Romania. But while I'm there, my employer, of course, will deduct tax out of my salary, right? But because I'm staying in Romania for a short time, and I'm a tax resident in Denmark, I have to inform the Danish authorities that I had an income from Romania and I paid so much tax in Romania. And if Denmark says, okay, for the same income, you must pay in Denmark, you must pay, I'm just giving an amount now to understand the situation, you have to pay like 10,000 Danish crowns, but I already paid 8,000 in Romania, then I get credit for those 8,000 I paid in Romania, and in Denmark I only have to pay the difference of 2,000 Danish crowns. That is the meaning of avoiding double taxation. Many times I hear people saying that avoiding double taxation means that you cannot pay tax in 2 countries in the same time. Actually, that's not right. You can pay tax in 2 countries at the same time, but you have the possibility to not pay full tax in both countries. You pay the highest tax, and if you paid something in a tax in a country with lower tax, you pay the difference to the country with higher tax. That means avoiding double taxation. Now, because we are exempt from double taxation, we cannot have double benefits. So if I'm working in Denmark, I cannot get benefits from Denmark and also from Romania. When we're talking about unemployment benefits, we also have to be very, very careful because, as I said in the beginning, every country has different rules and different ways to come to get to, this benefit. And for example, many Romanians and even Germans sometimes are kind of confused because in Romania and Germany, and these are just 2 examples, whenever you pay tax, whenever you work, you automatically have the right to unemployment because part of your tax goes to the unemployment benefits. So every country has their own rules. Let's say you've been working for an amount of time and then you lose your job, then you have the right to unemployment benefits. But in Denmark, it's not like that. You come to Denmark, you work in Denmark, and at a certain point you lose your job and you want to get unemployment benefits, and suddenly you realize that you do not have this right because you do not contribute it. You have not contributed to a special fund for being able to get unemployment benefits. In Denmark, it's called A-kasse, and you must work for at least 1 year, and you must contribute to A-kasse for at least one year, and each month you must have a special. You must have minimum. This year, actually, next year is going to be something like 21,000 Danish crowns before tax. And if you do not get this 21,000 Danish crowns every month, then this year, where you have the minimum of 1 year to work, then you'll need maybe 13, 14, 16 months to gather enough money to be able to get the unemployment benefits. So it's, as I said, it's different from country to country, and it's very important to check with the local authorities and see what the rules are in your specific case. If I'm going too fast, let me know. And also, if you have questions, do not wait until the end. Put them in the chat so I can see them, and maybe I can, while I'm presenting, I can also answer the questions you have. So we talked about unemployment benefits, and let's talk also about pension. whenever you, if you're a pensioner, you can move your pension to one country to another. So if you are getting pension from a European country and want to move to another country, you can move your pension to that other country. This is the easy way. Of course, you are still going to get money from the country where you obtained your pension. So even if you are, again, I'm taking Romania and Denmark as examples, even if you have been working in Romania and get your pension in Romania and move to Denmark, it's not going to be Denmark who's going to pay your pension. It's still going to be Romania that's going to pay your pension. It's going to be the same amount that you are entitled to from Romania. But let's say that you are working in many different countries. You like to move around and enjoy the freedoms that European Union gives you, and you want to move around and work 10 years in one country and 10 years in another country, and so on and so forth. What's going to happen with your pension in that situation? Who's going to pay your pension? So let's say you come to be, let's just say now 70 years old, and at that time you're going to live in France. Is France going to pay you all the pension, and only France going to pay pension for you? No, it's not. Yeah, it's kind of strange not having a bit of feedback, but it's not only France that's going to pay your pension. If you get to the age of pension in let's say now Denmark, which is, this age is going up and up and up. If you're getting to the pension age, then you can lodge a request with the Danish authorities, telling them that I have been working so many years in Romania, I have been working so many years in France, I've been working so many years in Germany. And then Denmark sends information to all this country and tell them, okay, this person came to the age of pension according to your national rules, and he would like to get pension from you. And then all these countries, when they say, okay, you have the right to so much in pension, all these countries are going to send information further to Denmark. And also you have the possibility to get your money through Danish authorities, in a way that all the countries are sending the money to the Danish authorities, and the Danish authorities are going to pay you the pension you received from all the other countries. So the beauty of European Union is that whatever you gained in one country while living there is not lost just because you are moving to another country. Yes, so we touched unemployment, we touched pension, and yeah, I would like to say a bit more at rights before we go further to non-Europeans. And I would like to talk a bit more about some more rights that we have here. I think we have them a bit further in our slides, but I'll just take them here. As a European citizen, if you're working in Denmark, and not only Denmark, and have your kids in another European country, then you have the right to get child benefits from the country where you are paying tax. Right? So again, I'm taking an example, and I'm taking Romania and Denmark. I hope I'm not offending anyone here. If I'm a Romanian citizen that works in Denmark and has the family, the kids and the wife back home in Romania, I am allowed to get child benefits from Denmark. But again, every country can make their own rules. And Denmark has a rule which says, okay, you are allowed to get child benefits from Denmark because you are working here and you have your child in Romania. But you have to prove that you have been working or living in an European country minimum 6 years out of the last 10. This rule came into effect in Denmark for some years ago because they wanted to limit the access of foreigners to child benefits. And this rule, even if it was targeted to all foreigners in Denmark, this rule had to be changed because the rule said you must prove that you've been working and living for at least 6 years in the last 10 in Denmark. But then the European Union came and said, no, this is discrimination and you cannot do that. If you want to give this benefit related to a period of time that the person have been working or living in a country, then you cannot take only Denmark, you have to take the whole European Union. So if the person lived in any European country for at least six years out of the last 10, then Denmark had the obligation to pay this child benefit. Another right that we get, it is the right to I'm forgetting the word in English. Parcel, it's in Danish. When you are getting a child, then you are allowed to stay home with your baby and take care of him for the first year, let's say. Again, we have to be very careful because every country makes their own rules, and they say to have the right to get this maternity leave. Sorry, that's maternity leave. To get this maternity leave, you must work in Denmark at least 3 months before the first day of your maternity leave. And during these 3 months, we are going to look and see if you had at least 160 hours in total, and we're going to look for the last 4 months, and in these 4 months you must have had worked at least 40 hours per month, at least 3 out of the last 4 months. Again, you can get this maternity leave for 4 weeks before the date where you have to give birth. 4 weeks before the date you are going to give birth. But if the doctor says, okay, because you have a pregnancy, you have to stop from your work earlier, you cannot continue to work until 4 weeks before birth, then you are allowed to get this maternity leave earlier. But it's very, very, very important. I met this case very, very many times, and the person did not get the approval from the doctor to stop their work. And if you do not get the approval from your doctor, and you just stop because you do not feel well, or maybe your employer fires you because you are pregnant, and you do not contest this firing, then you do not get the right to maternity leave. Again, just connected to this, you are the employer is not allowed to fire you because you are pregnant. And if he has to fire someone from the company, you as a pregnant lady, you should be the last one to be fired. And the employer has to prove that he's done everything possible to keep you working. Sorry, we have a question. Hi, it's Susanna. Hi, I'm working SOSU in Denmark with a little work of 3 hours in the weekends. Do I have the right to stay permanently in Denmark? I am Italian and I was working in Italy and Denmark as well. Yeah, of course, if you are studying in Denmark, I don't know how you got your right to stay in Denmark in the first place, but because you are studying in Denmark, you should have the right to stay in Denmark. But now you're asking permanently. We're just getting to this point now when we're talking about a permanent residence, because as I said in the beginning, you need a reason, you need a motive to stay in Denmark, and it has to be approved by the authorities. And you are allowed to stay in Denmark as long as you fulfill that condition, you got your residency through. So if I got a job and I'm staying in Denmark, I am allowed to stay in Denmark as long as I'm working or I am connected to the labor market. That includes unemployment benefits. So I'm connected to the labor market. I am still allowed to stay in Denmark. But if, let's just say I'm losing my job after some time, I'm not allowed to get unemployment benefits, then I might be asked to leave the country, or maybe change my grounds on which I'm getting the residence. Maybe I have somebody who can vouch for me and say, okay, I'm going to help him financially. But if I've been working in Denmark, or if I have been sustained by another person in Denmark, or if I stay here because I had sufficient funds, and I've been doing this for at least 5 years, then I have the right to apply for a permanent residence. When I applied for a permanent residence, the only requirement is that I've been living here for minimum 5 years, legally lived in Denmark for 5 years, and then I get a permanent residence, and then it doesn't matter if I'm working or not, if I'm studying or not, if I have enough money or not. I am not allowed to be kicked out of Denmark because I have my permanent residency. This permanent residency is going to be annulled if I have been working, if I've been out of Denmark for more than 2 consecutive years. So if I'm leaving Denmark and stay in another country for several months, no problem. I can come back to Denmark and maintain my residency. And the only way to get this cancelled is if I'm going to stay for more than 2 years outside of Denmark. Of course, all my rights, if the right to live in Denmark and the right to study in Denmark, and these rights that I have as a person, they extend to my family, because family is a fundamental right in Europe. They say I cannot allow you and only you to live in Denmark. I have to allow you and your family to live in Denmark. And now we can take the non-European part. This is a very big bonus for the non-Europeans who are married to European citizens, because you're a non-European who's married to a European citizen gets all the rights that the European citizen has just because they are married. Let's go to the right to buy a house. Yeah, many people are moving to other countries and they want to feel more at home. And then they want to buy a house. Again, I cannot stress this more enough. All countries make their own rules. In Denmark, to be able to get a house and have a property here, you must prove that this property you're going to use this property as your permanent domicile. So it's not a vacation house. If you prove that you are going to use it as a residence, then you do not need any special approvals from the authorities. You just have to declare, okay, I'm living in Denmark and I'm going to use this as my domicile. But if you are staying in Denmark, you want to buy a house, you bought your house, you're staying in it, and you want to buy a second house. Then if you want to buy a second house, you have you need to get the approval from the justice minister, and you have to prove why you want to buy the second house. You have to prove your connections to Denmark and so on and so forth. But if you've been living in Denmark for more than 5 years, then you have the right to buy as many houses as you want, and you also have the right to buy any vacation homes you want. The only thing is that you must have been living in Denmark for at least 5 years. Want to say something, Narcis?
Yes, I just want to say that Niels is here, so if you want to wrap up your part, then he can start his
yeah
session.
I'll take again, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and I'm going to take very short. We have healthcare, and we're going to talk about healthcare for the next 4 or 5 minutes, right? Again, I'm taking Romania and Denmark. I'm a Romanian coming to Denmark. I'm paying tax in Denmark, and through the tax I'm paying, I'm having insurance, health insurance in Denmark. And let's say that I'm going to travel around in Europe, and only European Union, I mean now. If I'm going to travel around, I have the right to use my health insurance from my home country to use it in any other European country. But this is only in the case of emergencies. So if I'm going to visit Romania and something happens to me, I break my leg, for example, I can use my health card from Denmark, but I need to ask for a blue card, is called in lay terms, but in official terms, it's called European Health Insurance Card. I get it from Denmark, and when I'm going to Romania, I can use that card and I don't have to pay anything in that country. But let's say that in the country where I'm going to use it, I'm going to take Germany, for example. If I'm going to Germany and I'm going to be hospitalized there for few days because, again, I broke my leg and I have to be in hospital. If a German, if a local has to pay something there, then I also have to pay. in Germany, I know that you have to pay, last few years ago, it was 10 euros per day of hospitalization. Then I also have to pay that. Yeah, it's very important to know that this European health insurance card does not give you the right and does not cover the costs of repatriation. And if, for example, you're not anymore able to travel back to your home country, Denmark in our case, this insurance does not cover special transportation back home and so on. So therefore, it's very, very important to make a special insurance for traveling, and you have to make this insurance covering Europe or maybe even for the whole world. Yeah, I think, Narcis, you touched a bit on the right to vote. And I'm not going to say anything
That's
about
correct.
votes, and it's correct because you touched this. And I'm just going to take a question. Petra is asking, hi, I have a quick question. After you get the permanent residence in Denmark, that residence doesn't expire, right? I have heard that the paper needs to be renewed after 10 years. Was curious about it. No, as European citizens, you do not have to renew your papers, and the residence doesn't expire. It doesn't have an expiration date. The only expiration date is if you leave Denmark for more than 2 consecutive years. So if you live outside of Denmark for more than 2 years, your residence expires, your permanent residence expires. Yeah, that was a very, very quick scratch of the surface of our rights we have in Denmark. Of course, you're going to get also the PDF file where we have a lot more information that we unfortunately could not cover this day. Do you have to ask for permanent residence before? No, you cannot ask before. You have to ask after the 5 years passed.
Yes, yeah. Put up the notes.
And when you're asking, if we still have 1 minute, if you're asking for a permanent residence, you need to prove that you have been living in Denmark. So if you had a job for 5 years in Denmark, then you can download all your tax declarations for the last 5 years and send them together with your application for permanent residency. And if you've been let's say that your spouse have been working, but you did not work in Denmark, then you have to prove in any other way you can that you really lived in Denmark. And sometimes it's a good thing that you have your own bank account and you make purchases in Danish shops. And then you can take the bank statements and show, okay, see here, I've been in Denmark for 5 years. And here you can see this day I've been shopping in Bilka, this day I've been shopping there. And you can see that I've been here for at least 5 years.
Super, Adrian. Thank you so much for your presentation and for being with us here today.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Remember that if you have any complex questions, feel free to talk to him. That's what he does for a living. So, and you have any personal cases that you don't know how to navigate in the Danish system, you can talk to him. So I will invite now to join me, well, to replace me here, Niels. He'll tell a bit about himself, and then he will continue with the last module for today. So Niels, you have the word.
Yeah. Hi everyone. So my name is Niels Martin. So did you want to press? Okay. So about that. So my name is Niels Martin Sunesen, and I helped create this course and the information that you have in it. So Now I'm gonna have to apologize for being a bit late. My train was a bit delayed getting back to Aalborg, so that is why we have to unfortunately skip ahead in some of our things that I talked to about. But let's jump right into it. So the main goal of this part of the module is to give you an understanding of your rights as a consumer in the EU, so that you are less likely to be taken advantage of, and telling you how you can file a complaint should you feel that you have been unfairly treated as a consumer. So let's jump right into it. The first thing is going to be consumer rights, then we'll take legal rights afterwards. So in the first part of this, we'll be looking at your consumer rights, and this covers a broad topic of areas such as your food and travel with public transportation. It's also on contracts that you might enter. And finally, we'll talk about your driver's license and what you should know about that as an EU citizen living in another member state. Now, EU consumer rules make it so that when you buy goods or services in the EU, you always have a clear information on the goods and services you're buying. That can be its price, shipping and delivery costs, and your rights for complaints should you be unhappy with the product that you have purchased. When it comes to something like online shopping, something that's becoming more and more common, then you have the right to know the status of the seller, meaning that you can see if it's a company or an individual entrepreneur you're dealing with. And this is very important. Because you're only protected by the EU consumer rights if it's actually from a company that you're buying. If you're buying from a private individual, you don't have these consumer rights at the same level. That's why it's quite important that you always know who it is that you're actually dealing with. Now, another important part of your rights as a consumer is that you always have the right to a minimum 2-year guarantee at no cost, regardless of whether you bought your goods online in a shop or by mail order. This 2-year guarantee is your minimum right. However, in some member states, you might have additional rights and can also have more protection as a consumer when this comes to your guarantees and warranties. Now, some shops and manufacturers will often offer you an additional commercial guarantee, and that is actually what is normally called a warranty. And that can either be included in the price of the product or at an extra cost. Now, this is something that you quite often would see with like electronics, where they offer you for additional price, then you can get a couple of more years warranties and stuff like that. Yeah, and this might give you an even better protection, but it can never replace or reduce the minimum 2-year guarantee, which you always have under EU rules. Similarly, if a shop sells you a new product more cheaply and claims that you have no guarantee, this would only imply they don't have any additional protection. Again, the 2-year guarantee is something that you always have no matter what. So that if you wanted to return your product, that is always something that you're able to do in case it's faulty or not as advertised. Now we'll take a quick look at the history behind some of the consumer rights that you have as an EU citizen. And we'll start out with the Treaty of Rome. Now, the Treaty of Rome, which created the European Economic Community, did not focus specifically on consumer rights, but it did lay the groundwork for the creation of a common market and economic cooperation, where it was very important to foster trust, especially in the products and services that were bought between the member states, that both being products for companies but also for individual consumers. Now, the consumer protection in the single market is a white paper by the EU Commission that outlined the need to improve consumer protection within the context of the single market. This document highlighted the importance of harmonizing national law to provide consumers with consistent rights and protections. And the Consumer Rights Directive was a significant milestone when it was adopted in 2011. This directive harmonized consumer rights across the EU, providing a common set of rules for distance and off-premise contracts. It strengthened consumer information requirements, extended the right of withdrawal, and established common rules for delivery and risks. And the EU Consumer Protection was a regulation aimed to strengthen the coordination and cooperation among national authorities responsible for enforcing consumer protection laws. And this regulation enhances the enforcement on consumer protection across borders, meaning that you shouldn't be treated worse just because you are in another EU member state and maybe have bought something from another EU member state. So the last one here is the Sustainable Products Initiative. And the European Commission proposed this initiative as part of the broader Circular Economy Action Plan. And this initiative aimed to make products more sustainable and doable, empowering consumers with more information about the environmental footprint of their products. So as you can see, your consumer rights are a very important part of the EU. These rights not only helps in giving you some peace of mind when buying food, a new phone, or a trip somewhere. Your rights also helps to make sure that you're protected against malicious business practices, no matter where you are in the EU. So, an important part of your right as a consumer in the EU is to know about the food that you actually get. And this both relates to where it comes from, what's in it, and how long it can last. So for this part of your consumer rights, we'll be looking at the food information rights that you have. So, and regarding your food information and where it comes from, this is of course the center of food information, since it allows you to quickly understand what kind of products you might be buying. And there are also rules on misinformation on your food. This is mainly about the packaging that it comes in. So to make sure that companies don't try to put misleading labels on their products, that being calling your products traditional, natural, stuff like that, while not actually fitting into those criteria. Another very important part is, of course, safety. An extensive body of EU-wide law covers the entire food production and processing chain within the EU, as well as imported and exported goods. EU countries implement these harmonized standards and establish control to enforce them. This means that you always have the same level of food safety, no matter where you are in the EU. Now, some countries might have more harsh requirements for the food sectors, but it can never limit the food safety standards, no matter where you are in the EU. Now, there are some different local or national elements that actually plays in here as well. An example of this could be the Swedish cinnamon bun. It actually has more cinnamon than what is allowed in the EU for a food product, since cinnamon may cause health problems if eaten in too large quantities. However, since the Swedish cinnamon bun is considered a traditional food in Sweden, they have an exception for this. So there are some foods that are allowed in one place in the EU, but not in another. So you wouldn't be able to sell the typical traditional Swedish cinnamon bun in, for example, Portugal, but you are in Sweden because they have the right to have this cinnamon. Now, most of you probably already know that you can see where your food has been produced on the packaging. It might state that your milk came from Denmark, your wine from Romania, and your strawberries from Spain. This is called origin labeling, and it's a general requirement in the EU for food products. This is heavily used when it comes to animal products, but also for fruits, vegetables, and cooking oils. Now, when it comes to allergies, then the EU regulation aims to provide a clear and harmonized presentation of possible allergens like soy, nuts, gluten, and lactose in pre-packed food, which has been labeled very clearly. This is very important, since you need to be able to trust what the packaging says on your food, especially if you have allergies and you might get in a very difficult situation if, for example, you're allergic to nuts and then you ended up eating nuts by an accident. The last part here we'll talk about is the EU Commission and its program, the Farm to Fork, which aims at making it more clear where your food comes from, what's in it, and how healthy it is. This is supposed to help you as a consumer, making more informed choices about your food, as well as your choice of food. And this is an important part of the strategy to support a more sustainable food production in the EU, so all of us have the ability to know that our food is not causing harm to the environment, to say it. Yeah. Again, like earlier, questions are always welcome. Just raise a hand or write in the chat if you have anything to say. Now, you might have tried buying something that wasn't really what you needed or wanted. There you have some rights when it comes to returning it. Likewise, if your product breaks down, and it's not your fault, of course, you also have a guarantee on it when you buy it in the EU. If you buy goods from outside the EU, like the US or China, you might not have a guarantee on it. So we already talked about guarantees and the rights you have there as EU citizen and consumer. So let's jump down to the next topic, that being your return rights. Now, you will often have the right to return products or goods that you have bought within 14 days, that being from when you receive the product in your own hands. So that's not when the company gets a confirmation order that you have purchased it. That only counts from when you actually have it in your own possession. And that period is called a cooling off period. And you do not need a special reason to cancel or return a product in those 14 days. The simple reason that you don't want the product, that's enough. There are, however, some exceptions to this rule on things like plane or train and concert tickets, as well as hotel bookings, car rentals, and catering services for specific dates. Here, the cooling off period is not applicable. If you buy goods in a shop in the EU, you also don't actually always will have the right to legally return goods for either to be exchanged or refunded, unless the item is faulty. However, many shops, they will voluntarily allow customers to return or exchange goods during a certain time period, provided you have the receipt. So here it's important as a consumer that you always check the receipt when you get it, and maybe also look up what kind of shop it is that you're actually purchasing your things from, to know if you are allowed to return the product in case you don't want it. Now, these kind of things also are decided when it comes to digital products. So on digital products, your return right doesn't count if you already started to use the product. That would be the same thing for a physical product. So just like if you bought a coffee maker, you used it once to make coffee, didn't really like the coffee it made, then try to return it, then you don't have that right anymore. It's the same thing with digital products. So if you bought a film, song, or book, and then the moment that you actually start to download it to one of your devices, then you can no longer have the right to send it back, because at that point, it counts as already having made use of the product. Yeah. So if you're having problems with an item or service that you bought in the EU, there are ways that you can seek to gain your money back in case you're having issues with the trader, that being the company that you bought the item from. The first step that you can take, the informal step, is to contact the traders or companies' customer service directly. Normally, information on this can be found on their website. Here you can tell them that they have not lived up to their part of the agreement or have failed to comply with EU or national law, and ask them to solve the problem. This is, of course, always a good idea here to have something that can back up your claim that they haven't lived up to their part of the agreement, such as an invoice or a contract. Now, if this doesn't help, you can always decide to take the matter one step further. That would be the out-of-court action that you can take. Now, you can try to settle your dispute with the trader by making use of an alternative dispute resolution procedure. This is a low cost and simple procedure that means that you do not have to take the trader and your case to court. And just a second, I have an issue here with my notes. There we go. And these alternative dispute resolution procedures are provided by natural out-of-court bodies such as conciliators, mediators, arbitrators, the ombudsman, and complaint boards. And they can bring you and the company together to help find a solution to your dispute. And they can also propose a solution or even impose one in some cases. And these alternative dispute resolution bodies have to meet very strict EU quality criteria, which guarantees that they handle your dispute in an effective, fair, and independent and transparent way. So you always have some sort of guarantee that they will treat you fairly. Now, in Denmark, this would be the Danish mediation team for consumer complaints. It's not free to make use of them. It costs about 100 crowns for the case. Now, you can use this procedure to claim reimbursement for goods or services. For example, you can make a claim for a faulty product that you have bought in another EU country or bought online from someone living in a different EU country. You don't need to make use of a lawyer to submit a claim here. That would only be when you get to the judicial court system. So in all of these we have here, there's no need for any kind of lawyers and that kind of issues. Now, this is not actually an option that you really have in Denmark. Instead, all of your complaints go to the Consumer Complaint Board. The Consumer Complaints Board is a judicial board that takes the judicial decisions. So in Denmark, you kind of skip this previous step a bit and go to someone who actually has the ability to enforce the decision. And the Consumer Complaints Board takes a decision in a case only if a consumer and a company have been unable to find a common solution through the Danish mediation team for consumer complaints. Yeah. And the decision of the Consumer Complaints Board are conditionally binding. This means that if the consumer is successfully before the Consumer Complaint Board, they can, as a rule, obtain the assistance of the bailiff's court to enforce the decision if the trader does not comply voluntarily. Decision of the Consumer Complaints Boards are only binding if the company states that they intend to comply with the decision, but then does not follow up on it. So if the company fails to respond, for example, to the Consumer Complaint Board, then they will be able to enforce the ruling. Yeah. Then we go on to the next slide. Yeah. Travel and reimbursement. Yeah. So most of us have tried to use public transportation, that either being plane, rail, bus, or ship. So for this part of the module, we'll look at your rights as a passenger and your ability to get reimbursement in case of unplanned events. Now, if you want to get reimbursement, then you have to go through what is called the ECC network. These are a group of independently managed offices co-funded by the EU Commission, and they can help you understand your rights as a consumer, help to settle a dispute with a seller, the one who sold you your ticket, in another EU country, as well as Iceland and Norway. In Denmark, this is called Forbruger Europa, which is the Danish ECC. When it comes to air travel, a bit of an extra information here. The outbound flight and the return flight always considered as two separate flights, even if they were booked as part of one reservation. In some cases, the airline operating the flight, also known as the operating air carrier, may not be the same as the one from which you have bought your ticket. In the case of any difficulties, only the airline which operates the flight can be held responsible. In case where an airline hires an aircraft including crew from another airline, the airline which hires the aircraft has operational responsibility for the flight and is regarded as the operating airline under EU rules. Meaning it's still the people that you bought the ticket from that are responsible for your journey, even if they try to put you on a flight from another company. Now, as we have already talked about in previous parts of the modules, you will always have the same rights as other nationals, no matter in what EU country that you are in. Therefore, there cannot be put any special requirements on you just because you're not a national of the country that you're traveling in or from. So you'll always have the same rights as any other passengers. In the same way, you must not be discriminated against just for not being a national of your host country or the country that you're flying from. So to give you a bit of an example of this, we have made up a short story that we'll try to tell. Gives you an idea of how this might actually work out. And for this story, we'll be following the journey of Christina, who lives in Aalborg and is going on a holiday to Athens. Now, Christina's holiday started out as most holidays do, as she was quite excited to be able to finally go on a nice holiday to somewhere with a bit of better weather than what she was used to in Aalborg. But her trip unfortunately got off on the wrong foot when unforeseen circumstances in public transportation caused her to arrive 30 minutes late at the airport. Now, this meant that she missed her first flight, but because she didn't want to miss any of as little as possible of her holiday, she quickly booked another ticket to Athens so that she could get on as fast as possible. Now, the vacation itself went very well in this example, but the troubles that she had from the beginning of her holiday came back to bite her once more when she was going to return home. Because when she was getting ready to go home and checked in for her flight back to Aalborg, she was shocked to learn that her ticket had actually been cancelled because she has not used outward ticket. Now, this was of course very frustrated for Christina, especially because she realized she had to buy a new ticket from the same airline. Now, determined not to let this ruin the last parts of her holiday, she decided to seek justice for the inconvenience she had faced. So on board the flight, she told the flight attendant that she was going to pursue legal action once she returned to Denmark. But to her surprise, the flight attendant actually claimed that the airline's terms and conditions stipulated that any legal action must be taken in Malta, where the airline was based. Now, unwilling to accept this limitation on her rights, Christina carefully reviewed the terms and conditions on the airline's website. There she discovered a clause specifying that legal action should be brought before a Maltese court. On return, Christina contacted the European Consumer Center, ECC, network for guidance on what to do. The ECC network is we've already talked about, a very good resource for EU citizens facing cross-border consumer issues. And they were able to provide Christina with valuable information. They explained that any terms in the airline's terms and conditions that restricted her legal right to take action was unfair and therefore invalid. Armed with this knowledge, Christina was relieved to hear that she would indeed be able to take the matter to a court in Denmark. Furthermore, the ECC also confirmed that the airline's terms allowing for the cancellation of a return ticket solely because the outward ticket hadn't been used might be considered unfair under certain circumstances. This revelation strengthened Christina's resolve to seek compensation for the inconvenience, expenses, and stress that she had experienced throughout her journey. So once back in Denmark, Christina consulted with a legal expert and decided to initiate court proceedings against the airline. Her case highlighted the importance of knowing that and asserting one's rights as an EU citizen, especially in face with unjust contractual terms. As the legal process unfolds, Christina has hoped that this will kind of help make other consumers understand their rights and therefore be able to challenge unfair practices within the travel industry. Now, I am aware that this is going a bit fast, so again, if anyone has a question, just pop it in the chat, and then I will be able to go back to things that we have talked about. Yeah. So every time you buy a product or service from a professional company or trader, you're entering into a contract, whether it's signing up for a gym membership, ordering a book online, getting a mortgage on your house, or even just buying your weekly shopping from the supermarket. Under EU law, standard contract terms used by companies have to be fair. This doesn't change if they're called terms and conditions or a part of a detailed contract that we already signed. The contract is not allowed to create an imbalance between your rights and the obligation as a consumer and the rights and obligations of the company and suppliers. Also, contract terms must be drafted in plain, understandable language. Any ambiguities will always be interpreted in you, the consumer's favor. Meaning that if the contract is almost impossible to read, then it will always be in your favor. They can't just make it ununderstandable as a way of hiding what they're doing. Now, an example of this could be hidden terms in a contract. So such terms are not easy to notice and might therefore be overlooked before you sign the contract. So let's say that you have rented an apartment, and when you move in, then the owner says that you have to use specific cleaning service that charges you 1,000 crowns a month on top of your rent. Now, looking at your contract, you can see that there's indeed a clause that states, and then again refers to a different document, that you have to make use of this specific cleaning company, but you've never received this document before signing. Therefore, this would be an example of unfair terms in a contract. Because of this, you will not be bound by this part of the contract, and the owner of the apartment can't force you to. Neither can they force you or punish you for not following this part of it. A contract can also not take away or restrict how and where consumers can take legal action. Now, we already heard about this in our previous example. So this could be if a company states it can only take action in a specific country, even though you use their services like a plane ticket in a different country. So if you wanted to complain about an Italian company while using their services in France, you can still take the matter to a court in France, even if the company's terms and conditions for using them stated that the user would only allow them to take legal actions in Italy. Now, contract terms that are unfair under EU law have no legal or binding force on the consumer, as long as the unfair term is not an essential part of the contract. The rest of the contract remains valid. This means, for example, that you won't have to give up your gym membership just because there's one clause in the contract that's unfair. This could, for example, be that the gym forces you to buy orange juice from them. They can't do that, but the actual gym membership can still be in effect because that's not really an important part of that contract. Now, if you have a driver's license from an EU country, then you can use it in any other member state. Since 2013, all driving licenses in the EU have used the same standard format to make it easier to use for you as a consumer, but also for national and local authorities to verify. Now, you might need to or be required to exchange your original driver's license with one from your host country, meaning the country that you live in, if your license is stolen or damaged. And then it will be the country that you live in that will be giving you a new one. So it wouldn't go back to your home country. Again, let's say you're living in Denmark, but you came from Germany. You wouldn't have to go back to Germany to get a new driver's license. You will just get a new one in Denmark. And if you're living in Denmark, that's also where you would need to get it from. Now, if you commit a traffic offense in the country that you live in, then you might also have to exchange your previous driver's license for a new one, if it's not one from that country. Another important aspect of this is also regarding if it's a temporary or permanent stay that you have in that country. So if you are a temporary resident in Denmark, for example, just here for work for a short period or studying, then you can usually make sure of your home EU driver's license without exchanging it for a Danish one if you're living here for a limited period of time. But if you plan to stay in Denmark for an extended period, you might need to exchange your driver's license for a Danish one. The rules for when this exchange is required can depend on factors such as the length of your stay, your residency status, and the type of license that you hold. That is because there is 8 differences around the EU when it comes to when you can get a driver's license, and also the different kinds of driver's license. Therefore, it's always a good idea to check up on the rules in different countries if you're going on a trip in Europe. In Denmark, for example, you can get a normal driver's license already at 17 years old. However, until you reach 18, you'll have to have another person with you when you drive. This is called a companion driver. And a companion driver must be at least 30 years old and have a Danish driver's license. The companion driver must also at all times be able to drive the car. So the companion driver cannot be drunk or on drugs. And this scheme is only allowed in Denmark, so you can't drive in another EU country as a 17-year-old, even if you have a companion driver with you. Now, there are no EU-wide rules on driver training, driving schools, or driving instructors. There are, however, minimum EU standards for driving tests, mainly that you need to pass both a practical and a theory test. The driving examiners also have some standards that they must successfully complete a training program and be subject to periodic quality assurance and training. So you have some assurance that the people who are driving together with you on the road, have an idea of what they're doing if they have taken driver's courses. Now, we have a short amount of time left, so let's jump quickly into legal rights that you have. Now, you've already talked about your rights as an EU citizen to a fair contract, and that you have most of the same general rights as any national citizen in your host country, barring a few political rights. So for this chapter of the module, we'll talk about some of the less known rights that you have regarding language, consular rights, and inheritance. Now, one of the EU's founding principles is multilingualism, which aims to, one, make sure that you can communicate with the EU institutions in your own language. It's to help protecting Europe's rich linguistic history and diversity, and it's to promote language learning in the Europe. So the different languages in the EU is something that the Union is very proud of, and something that makes lives in Europe more interesting, and therefore something that gets support. But how exactly does the EU give you, as EU citizen, the best possibility to maintain your language when living in another EU country? That is the Mother Tongue Directive. And the way the EU support this with the directive is through legislation that gives EU citizens, more specifically children, the right and opportunity to have the language of their parents' mother tongue taught them. Now, if you have two parents that come from different member states, then as the child, or more likely the parents, will choose which of the two languages the children should be able to learn. And the way this is used is that at any municipality in Denmark, all the kids that are at compulsory education age, which start at the age of 6 and last 10 years until the age of 17, have the right to receive language classes in the mother tongue if they come from another EU member state, or if their home country has an agreement with the EU on this area. So if you wish, the municipality can inform you of the options that are available to you. And if there are no options available to you, then if it's possible to find 12 students for a language, this would be, we have an example a bit further on, and a suitable teacher, then the municipality has to set up that language class. Now, depending on the situation, the municipality might have to set up the class in cooperation with another municipality to make sure that the students can get a teacher, or let the children in their municipality join a specific language class that another municipality has, in case they can't set up the class themselves. Now, the example of this might be that you have a child and you would like them to receive classes in your mother language. Now, for this example, let's say that language is Finnish, and there are no Finnish language classes in your municipality. Then you team up with some other Finnish-speaking parents that you know, and now you can present the municipality with 12 children that all would like to receive Finnish language classes. Now the municipality will try and find a suitable teacher for the children and see if the classes can fit into the children's current school program. If not, the classes might have to be held after normal classes. But the important part of this is that your children now have classes in your mother tongue and will be able to learn that language properly in the right settings. Yeah. So, consular rights. One of the EU's founding principles. Change my slide over here. Yeah. As an EU citizen, you are entitled to help from any embassy or consulate of any EU member state outside of the EU. Should you ever find yourself in a situation where you need help and you're in a country where your own home country or the country that you are a citizen of does not have a representation in that country. Now, this of course is only outside of the EU that these rules are applicable. So how does this help you? When unrepresented EU citizens seek help from the embassy or consulate of another EU member state, they must prove their identity by showing a passport or identity card. Now, in case that their documents have been stolen or lost, their nationality can be proven by other means, including by verification with the authorities of their home country. So that way that they can get the help, even if they don't have the necessary documents on them. Now, the unrepresented citizen of EU member states will be consulted by the member state that they are seeking help from, and they can do this at any time. And at the same time, this can also be done by your home country, meaning that they can contact the embassy that you're talking with and then help you either through phone or digital wise in case you can't get to your own home country's embassy. That way they can help you get in contact with family or friends, should the need be, if you're stranded in another country. And now, the important part here is that you then have the rights to the same help that the embassies who you're seeking help from own citizen would have. So you have the full ability to be helped no matter what you are. Yeah. So about that, I've been speaking for quite some time. So we're jumping down to EU emergency travel document. Now, should you end up losing your passport during a trip outside the EU, then an EU member state embassy can help you to get an emergency travel document. This document allows for an EU citizen to have a single journey back to the EU country of origin or the EU country where they have a permanent resident position. Yeah. In exceptional cases, it can also actually help you to travel to somewhere else, either inside or outside the EU. Yeah. And I am being told I have to wrap this up. So the important part, if you want to get like one of these emergency travel documents, then you must send the application form together with certified photocopies of any available proof of identity and nationality to the authority of your home country, who can then help you with the embassy that you're currently at. Yeah. So we'll just quickly go over inheritance. We'll take a couple of minutes to go over inheritance. Again, this is also a very important part. Because as an EU citizen, you might have traveled and lived several different places in the EU, and also therefore might have assets in more than one EU country, or family spread out over several EU countries. Therefore, you might wonder what the inheritance rules are, which EU country will be responsible for it, and how the inheritance laws are. This is what we're going to be trying to talk a bit about here in the final part of today's module. So, EU rules on inheritance or succession apply for all the EU member states, with the exception of Denmark and Ireland, which we'll get to later, since they have opted out of this. Now, normally, your inheritance or succession will be handled by the member state where you have last lived in. Here, they will normally apply their national law to your inheritance, like who the beneficiaries of your inheritance are, who is liable for any debts that you have, and how your assets should be shared among your heirs. EU rules does not determine elements on this like inheritance taxes or your civil status like marriage or registered partnership. That is very important when it comes to how your property should be divided after death of spouse or partner. Likewise, EU rules doesn't have any say on what will happen to any shares that you own. This is the national rules that you were looking at. Now you can actually decide for yourself which country's rules should govern your inheritance, since there are some differences from country to country in the EU. However, it must be a country that you are affiliated with, like your home country or your country of residence. You can't just say Spain for the fun of it, because you think that might be a fun experience for the people that you leave behind. Now, the authority of the EU country that handles your inheritance or succession can refuse to actually apply certain provisions of the law of your home nationality if they are contrary to local public policies. For example, authorities could refuse to apply provisions if they are discriminated between heirs based on their sex or whether they were born in or out of wedlock. Now, a court decision on inheritance given in an EU country will be recognized in any other EU countries without any special procedures. However, if the party in the other EU countries does not voluntarily comply with the court decision, you can apply for the decision to be declared enforceable, so the police or bailiff can then intervene to enforce the decision. This could be if someone doesn't want to hand over some property, for example. The other party may only appeal against the recognition or enforceability of the decision for the following reasons. 1. The decision is clearly incompatible with the public policy of the EU country in which it should be recognized or enforced. For example, because it's discriminatory, the decision contradicts previous court decisions of the EU in which it should be recognized or enforced. Any of the persons involved in the proceedings were not given the chance to actually prepare their defense. It's also a reason for it. So anyone involved in it has to be heard before a decision can actually be carried out. Now, court decisions made by the courts in Denmark and Ireland do not benefit from these simplified rules when their rulings need to be recognized or enforced in another EU country. So there are some extra steps there that might get in the way. Now, the special Danish rules would mean that in Denmark, you can actually choose to make use of another EU member state's rules on inheritance if you're a Danish resident when it comes to belonging and assets. This will be subject to Danish rules, among them estate tax, if you have property in Denmark. So let's say that you came from Italy, moved to and lived in Denmark, bought a house, but then your family stayed in Italy or moved back to Italy. Then they would still have to follow Danish inheritance rules after you did. This would also be the case for your Danish property if you actually moved back to Italy as well before you died, but kept the house. In Denmark, only the spouse is accepted from estate tax in case of inheritance and insurance payments in case of like, again, death. So life insurance is only the spouse that actually gets the payment without taxation. Anyone else will actually have to pay this. Yeah. So we have been a bit quick here in the final part. So we are sorry that we couldn't quite keep to the time schedule, but we hope that you all learned quite a lot and were interested in what we had to tell you. So are there any questions for this final part, or doesn't look like it? Well, then I will say thank you all very much for participating. Thank you too, Jason. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Yeah. So, bye.